Next on Unsolved Mysteries. 3 inmates break out of jail and lead police on a high-speed chase that ends in a wild shootout. The ringleader is still on the run. After a routine stop at the bank, a woman is abducted in her own car. Then she attempts a risky escape. After a woman is kidnapped, her husband pays a ransom of more than $1 million. Not to one person, but to 12. Which one is the mastermind? And 2 10-year-old boys die in a suspicious fire. Eyewitnesses and family members believe that they were murdered. But why were they killed? 5 cases with strange clues, bizarre twists, and secrets you would never expect. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. In the town of Seminole, Oklahoma, 19-year-old Travis Wade Duncan worked as a mechanic. He had just moved into his own apartment. Other than one minor scrape with the law, his record was clean.
Travis was a quiet young man. He'd get in a little mischief now and then, but growing up, he was a good kid, and from a good family there.
So when Duncan was arrested for stealing guns, his family and friends were surprised. Duncan claimed that when he bought the guns, he had no idea that they were stolen. His bail was set at $25,000, but his family couldn't afford to post the bond.
Step back from the door.
Duncan was sent to the Seminole County Jail.
He appeared to be a little nervous to be in jail.
In you go.
Travis was the kind that was very quiet. He never did cause any trouble at all. He was just a real quiet type, kind of kept to himself.
Duncan ended up sharing a cell with another prisoner, 19-year-old John Fisher. According to deputies, Fisher was both charismatic and a little crazy.
Fisher was arrested on a murder charge, first-degree murder. John's goal in life was to be the drug lord of Oklahoma. He was constantly fantasizing about and telling and bragging to other people that he was in with the Medellin cartel of South America, that he had bukus of money, just any amount you had. He had several accounts that had hundreds of thousands of dollars in it. Most people knew he was fantasizing.
John Fisher.
But Travis Duncan was not most people. He was young, naive, and gullible, and an easy mark for John Fisher.
I'm getting out of here. I got $200,000 in a bank in Oklahoma. I got guns, I got a car, everything.
Fisher was the kind that would look you right in the face and tell you exactly how he felt. He was a leader among the other inmates. Everybody looked up to him.
Oklahoma's mine.
I always considered Fisher to be an escape risk just by his actions, and he would come straight out and admit it, that he would escape if he had the chance.
For almost 3 months, Fisher worked on Duncan, filling his head with wild ideas. Finally, Duncan's bail was reduced and he was released on the condition that he would live with his parents. But within a few days, Duncan violated the terms of his release. He left his parents' home and took his sister's pickup truck. No one knows where Travis Duncan went, only what he did.
Travis manufactured Molotov cocktails, different things, loaded up the back end of the pickup with all types of ammunition, 9mm pistols, shotguns, all different types of things, some camping equipment, and food, water, things to live off of if they had to hide out for a while.
The day after leaving his parents' home, Travis Duncan showed up at the county jail.
Hey, Travis. Hey, what's up? Not much. Let's go. Don't move. Come around.
When he pulled the gun on me, I was frightened. He also told me if I didn't cooperate with him, that he would shoot me.
This job ain't worth your life. Move!
Duncan was familiar with the jail routine. He knew that at this hour, only one deputy would be on duty. Duncan quickly found the keys to the other cell. He lost no time freeing John Fisher.
Fish, you ready? I'm ready. I was born ready. Let's go, man. Come on. Come on.
Although Fisher tried to get other prisoners to leave, only one other inmate, Timothy Johnson, was willing to go.
I think it came as a surprise to Fisher that Travis did this, showing up at just the quick moment that he did. We were prepared for a break, for an escape from the inside. We never dreamed of one coming from the outside on us.
It was approximately 30 minutes before we knew of the escape, and a general broadcast was sent out over the escape with the vehicle description and the occupants. Police units up on the interstate picked them up on radar running high rate of speed.
The Oklahoma Highway Patrol set up a roadblock to intercept the fugitives.
As they came around the curve, got within visual sighting of our roadblock, the driver, Travis Duncan, then accelerated to about 100 miles an hour. I jumped in my patrol car and began pursuing the pickup. As I caught up to the pickup, Fisher began to lean out the window and point the shotgun at my patrol car as I was pursuing him. Every time he'd lean out and try to draw a bead on my unit, then I would go to the left or the driver's side of the pickup, get as far over as I could, get out of the line of fire. This is something that you expect to see on the movies, but you don't really expect it to happen to you.
Within a few hours, Duncan, Fisher, and Johnson had roared across more than 150 miles of Interstate 40 with state troopers in hot pursuit. 24 miles from the Arkansas border, Duncan made a beeline for Kerr Lake, an area which the troopers knew well, but the fugitives did not.
We exited the interstate, started south on the county road. As we did, Fisher leaned out the passenger window and threw what appeared to be a beer bottle up into the air, like he was going to try to throw something through the windshield of my patrol car. That Molotov cocktail failed to ignite because it hit the road. The wind, the high speed, blew the wick out. All it was doing was smoldering.
Seconds later, Fisher tossed another homemade bomb out of the truck. It didn't go off either. Trooper James stayed on their heels. In no time, they were heading down a dead-end road.
You don't have time to fear anything. The adrenaline's pumping so hard. But your mind's rushing, you know. I hope I told my kids that I love them before I came to work today.
Once the firefight subsided, the three fugitives took off for the woods. They had no idea that they were trapped on a peninsula that jutted out into the lake. By nightfall, authorities had them surrounded. The Oklahoma Lake Patrol was called in to search the shore.
Hey, don't shoot, okay? Coming out, don't shoot. Your hands up over your head. Turn around. Run up, don't shoot.
Just before 10 p.m., police captured John Fisher and Timothy Johnson, the escaped convicts. They claimed that Duncan had been shot and his body was in the woods. Later, they would admit that he had actually gone off on his own.
We kept the area contained for nearly 3 days, hoping to find Duncan. We used tracking dogs. We did searches in case he had, in fact, been shot and was down in the woods. To no avail. We're unable to locate him. No signs that he's in there. There was no evidence to indicate that he'd been shot.
1 month later, deputies discovered a man's body across from the peninsula. He had been shot through the head. Police concluded that Duncan had gotten away by swimming across the lake. They think that Duncan then shot the man and stole his truck. Travis Duncan has not been seen since the night of the escape. Update. After a tip from one of our viewers, Travis Duncan was arrested in Boise, Idaho. He pleaded guilty to 9 counts, including kidnapping and assisting in a prison escape. Duncan was sentenced to 20 years in prison and was released after serving just under 8. Police now believe that Travis Duncan had nothing to do with the murder of the camper who was shot on the lake shore. John Fisher was sent back to prison to serve a life sentence on a murder conviction in an unrelated case. The third fugitive, Timothy Johnson, also ended up back in prison on multiple charges. However, he served his time and has since been released. Next, will DNA left at a crime scene help solve the murder of a public defender? Palo Alto, California. After raising 3 children, Gretchen Burford embarked on a new life, enrolling in law school at the age of 41. Within a few years of her graduation, Gretchen had a full-time practice specializing in juvenile law.
I think justice was really important to my mother, and I think that's part of the reason she was drawn to a career in law. She wanted to help people who didn't maybe start out with all the benefits that her children had.
Gretchen put her heart and soul into defending the people, and she worked hard with them, not only just with the legal defense, but there were a lot of things that she would be involved in as far as their personal lives.
Late on a Friday afternoon, Gretchen left her office and headed home for the weekend. Police believe that what happened next was a random act of violence. Bank records verify that at 6:37 p.m., Gretchen deposited a check at a bank 4 blocks from her office.
It's here that we suspect that her assailant may have accosted her for the first time. She may have been the type of person who left her car unlocked, which is what assailants look for when they are stalking their victims. She's near a walk-up teller at night. Obviously, she would be a target for some type of an attack.
Shut up! Shut up!
Police believe that Gretchen was abducted in the bank parking lot 5 or 10 minutes after she arrived. What happened next remains a complete mystery.
We can only speculate as to what was going on during that 20 minutes. She was used to this type of person and perhaps was trying to appeal to him as to what the consequences would be. Who knows? We don't know.
Just 25 minutes after depositing her check, Gretchen tried to withdraw money from another ATM 3 miles away. This transaction was declined because the amount exceeded her daily limit. Police now believe that Gretchen may have been trying to stall her abductor.
Where's the money?
I don't know. I don't know.
We had 2 witnesses pull up behind Gretchen's vehicle. The male driver saw a struggle going on inside the car. He saw the driver's door open, and then it appeared that she was pulled back inside. Witnesses have told us that she got out of her car screaming, "He stabbed me, he stabbed me," and help me. And she collapsed immediately. So the wound was definitely a one single stab, and it was fatal.
Police believe that Gretchen deliberately crashed her car in a desperate attempt to escape. In the aftermath, 2 witnesses were able to get a good look at the killer.
The lady jumped out of the car screaming that she was stabbed. And then he got out of the car, stared me and my friend down. Then he turned around and ran. Within 2 seconds, 3 seconds, he was out of sight. Since the girl hit the ground, she said she was stabbed. We went for her. She was lying on the ground, and I could see a little pool of blood. She was looking up at me. She was saying, "I'm dying. I'm going to die." I said, "You're just bleeding, and you're going to be fine, so just, relax." And I held her hand. She looked up at me. Her eyes rolled back, and her eyes closed, and it kind of, I guess her life ended right there.
133. Can you ascertain a apartment number on my last call? 133.
When I arrived at the scene, Gretchen had already been transported to an emergency room. I almost immediately started processing her vehicle for any evidence. I looked inside and saw a Paisley baseball hat in the rear passenger compartment that just seemed out of place. We later confirmed that that did not belong to her, and it's unknown how that got in her car. So we assumed that it belonged to our suspect.
The next day, authorities recovered the murder weapon, a butcher knife with an 8-inch blade. It was found in a driveway 1 block from the scene, but provided no additional leads. Police next focused on the Paisley hat found in Gretchen's car. Even though all attempts to connect the hat with the suspect had failed, police are convinced that it could hold a key to solving the case.
I think it's ironic that my mother would have gone on helping, for years probably. That she'd only just started her law career, that she had so much to give and was giving so much and helping so many people, and that it was just ended by somebody who had no idea who she was or what she was, or no ability to care about her.
Update. Nearly 2 decades after the murder, DNA found in the Paisley hat was matched to Tyrone Hamill, a convict in a Texas prison. Hamill admitted he had killed Gretchen Burford and was sentenced to a 2nd term of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Next, a millionaire's desperate search for his kidnapped wife. Jackson, Mississippi. Robert Herron was one of the wealthiest men in the state. His wife, Annie Laurie Herron, was a devoted wife and mother. On an ordinary morning in July, Annie was kidnapped.
Good morning. On behalf of...
12 days later, Robert Herron called a press conference at his home.
My name is Robert Herron. My wife, Annie Laurie, was taken from our home over 10 days ago. My children and I have done everything humanly possible to obtain her release. My children and I appeal to whomever has my wife that she may be safely returned to us. Thank you.
I think about Mom all the time, and I'm sure my daddy does too. There's no real way to quantify what this, how enormous a tragedy and ordeal this has been to him and to the rest of the family.
The kidnapping of Annie Herron was unusual. The ransom note demanded payment not to 1 person, but to 12. All had some connection to one of Robert Herron's companies. It was a strange twist to a troubling case.
On the day of Annie's abduction, Robert came home from work and was alarmed when he found that his wife was missing. After checking with friends and family, he called the police.
I'll wait right here for you, officer. Thank you.
Then Robert made a disturbing discovery. A note, apparently left by a kidnapper, lay by his front door.
The note said, "Do not call the police. However, Mr. Herring had notified the police prior to the note being discovered.
It was clear from the contents of the note that Annie's abduction was in some way connected to Robert's businesses.
Robert Herring put these people back in the shape they was in before they got mixed up with school pictures.
The demands in the note were very vague and made several demands of Mr. Herring concerning certain individuals listed on the note who were allegedly harmed by a company of which Mr. Herring was president.
Robert had been president of a company called School Pictures. The company sold franchises to photographers throughout the United States to produce photo portraits of school children. In an effort to collect money owed to them, School Pictures filed lawsuits against 12 franchise owners in 8 states, including Florida. On the day that Annie was kidnapped, witnesses reported seeing a white cargo van with Florida plates in the neighborhood. Police soon discovered that the 12 names on the kidnapper's ransom note were the same 12 people who had been sued by School Pictures.
It's possible that these 12 people had absolutely nothing to do with this abduction. However, you can't rule out the fact that maybe somebody, especially that had the knowledge of School Pictures and its operation, could have been involved with it.
School Pictures was requested to look into their files on these 12 people. The transactions were reviewed, and letters were, of course, sent out to these 12 people trying to determine what damages that they had. What did they want? At that point, we didn't get a response except from several of them saying, we don't want anything.
8 days after his press conference, Robert received a letter. He recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from his wife, Annie.
This gave us quite an emotional lift because it meant that Mother apparently had survived the initial struggle, but it still was extremely vague as to what we were to do. At that point, Daddy, in order to do something to show our good faith effort to comply with these vague demands, instructed his attorneys to check these rolls and find out how much School Pictures had sued these 12 individuals for.
Robert sent out checks totaling nearly $1 million to the 12 people on the list. Half of the checks were returned. The letter, in Annie's own handwriting, would be the last word that her family or police would ever receive from the kidnapper.
It's been our sincere desire from the very beginning, from the moment of the kidnapping, that we do everything possible to comply with these demands. We want Mother back.
Update. Newton Alfred Wynn, a 65-year-old lawyer, was arrested by the FBI in Florida on charges related to the kidnapping of Annie Laurie Herring. Wynn was one of the 12 men named in the ransom note left at the Herring mansion. Also, less than 1 month before the kidnapping, he had purchased a van which matched the description of the vehicle seen in the Herring neighborhood. Newton Alfred Wynn was convicted of conspiracy to kidnap, extortion, and perjury. He was sentenced to 19 years and 7 months in prison. Wynn has since been released and still maintains that he is innocent of the kidnapping. Annie Laurie Herring has never been found. Her husband, Robert, is now deceased, but Annie's family is still looking for her. Next, a young woman can't remember her family, her friends, or even her own name. A local park in Longview, Washington.
I was laying in some grass, and my first memory was unbelievable pain. The only noise I could hear really was just pounding, pounding in my ears, you know. I felt so unbelievably sick that I couldn't stay in one place. It was like something was telling me just to get up, to go. And then all of a sudden I started thinking, I I didn't know who I was or where I was.
Imagine yourself as a teenager, wandering alone, confused and vulnerable, without any idea of your name, your age, the date, or even what city you're in.
My head was hurting so much, I wasn't really there. And the first person I saw was this older man leaning against a car, and it seemed like it took forever to get to him.
When she asked the stranger for help, he volunteered to take her to the police station. In the car, he never identified himself. The stranger dropped her off a half a block away from the police station, and instead of helping her inside, he immediately drove away. Deputy Joel Reese was leaving the station when he encountered the confused girl.
Can you help me?
Sure. What seems to be the problem?
I can't remember anything.
I met her out in front of the Hall of Justice at about 3:15 in the afternoon. She looked disorientated, scared. I told her I was going to take her to the hospital. She didn't know what a hospital was.
This girl had a small lump on the back of her head, which was compatible with either being struck on the back of the head with an object or falling down, and had developed acute amnesia as a result of that single blow. She had no recall about her family. She had no idea what age she was or whether she had completed high school, nor where she had attended high school.
With no clues to the girl's identity, the police placed her picture in the local newspaper. When a woman named Gloria Cook saw the photo, she immediately recognized her daughter, Kyra.
Gloria and her husband rushed to the hospital.
A nurse brought a girl down the hallway toward us. And for a minute there, I thought maybe I made a mistake. Maybe this isn't Kyra. She looked different and carried herself different. But when she got up to us, I knew it was Kyra. And Kyra looked at us and looked at the deputy. She turned around to the nurse and she said, "Are these supposed to be my parents?"
The first time I met my parents was at the hospital. I think a day or two after I was there, and they were just like every other person I'd met, totally strangers. I think I felt real bad because the feelings weren't there, nothing was there, and it was really dragging myself down, trying to make up feelings even.
After 5 days in the hospital, Kyra was allowed to go home. But instead of triggering familiar memories, it was just like visiting a strange new house.
First time I went into my room, I felt really guilty. I felt like I was in somebody else's room, and I didn't want to look through anything. I did not want to touch anything. It took me a couple months before I would even go through drawers. And then when I first read my diary, I felt like I was invading somebody's privacy. It took me so long to get through it because I didn't really connect the idea that that was actually me before the accident.
Despite her memory loss, Kyra's amnesia was not total. She retained her talent for art, remembers algebra, and can still speak German.
Amnesia is a mystery to us. I never had the feeling that Kyra was faking the amnesia. She was constantly thinking very clearly and rationally about how she might understand who she was.
Does this mean anything?
It's like looking at a stranger.
It's difficult enough, I guess, for a parent to have a child die. But when you have a child that loses their entire life and doesn't even know you, and you have to live with that, and every day you wake up hoping, today maybe she'll remember. And at the end of the day, you cry because she didn't.
The mysterious incident that erased Kyra's memory took place sometime during a brief 1-hour period. Kyra went to the post office to mail a package. Police believe that she left at about 2:15 p.m. Kyra woke up in the park at 3 p.m. with no memory of what had taken place.
My personal theory is she was either dodging a car or was struck by a car and fell and hit her head. There's so much traffic in the area there. It's a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and people tend to drive a little faster than that. At the hospital, we checked for other injuries. There were no other injuries but the bump on the base of her skull.
Kyra's parents have a totally different theory about what happened.
Knowing Kyra, she took a shortcut from the post office. I think someone grabbed her from behind by the throat. Didn't realize how strong she was. She started to fight them off, and they took their fist and hit her and caught her at the base of her skull.
Kyra was carrying a brown paper sack containing her makeup and spending money for the day. When she woke up in the park, it was gone. Perhaps the key to this mystery is the stranger who drove Kyra to the police station. Repeated appeals in the local newspaper and by the police department for the stranger to come forward have met with no success.
If he would even talk to us anonymously, call anonymously and let us know, did she say anything in the car? Did he see anything? He was the closest person to her at the time it happened.
18 years have passed since Kyra lost her memory. No one, her parents, her doctor, even Kyra herself, has been able to fill in the time that she's missing. For Kyra to regain her past, her doctors believe that something or someone must trigger her memory.
When people are talking about the past between themselves, I envy them for having a past. And as the months grow on after the accident, I'm building up a past. So, you know, I'm just looking forward to the day when I can look back on 20 years and just think of all those things.
Kyra Cook has begun the long process of gathering a lifetime of memories. Perhaps the day will come when what she is able to recall will outweigh what she has lost forever. Next, the disturbing case of two young boys who died in a fire. Were their deaths an accident or murder? Bullhead City, Arizona is a small desert town on the banks of the Colorado River. Sue Johnson moved here from California. She and her husband felt that it was a great place to raise their children, Scott and Angel.
They loved it. Scott was a natural-born fisherman. He loved to fish and go out in the desert, catch lizards, catch a snake, whatever. He was a desert rat. He just fell in love with it.
Less than 50 yards from the Johnsons' new home stood an old shed, once used by copper miners as a powder magazine. It became a playhouse for Scott and his friends.
Got you! Got you! Oh, they just played there and played cops and robbers and Indians and cowboys and whatever else little boys do. I never felt any apprehension towards that building at all. And it was within sight of the house. It wasn't anything to worry about. It was a typical thing that children would pick to use for a fort or a clubhouse.
At 3:45 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, the Bullhead City Volunteer Fire Department responded to a call. The old powder magazine was on fire. Former Fire Chief Larry Adams vividly remembers the details.
All right, open it up.
What I could see through the smoke and the steam is what appeared to be upholstery on the floor.
Through the pike pole.
When I got the pike pole, I stooped down to look under the smoke to hook this material and drag it out to extinguish it.
Oh my God.
Adams had found the badly burned bodies of Scott Johnson and one of his friends. 7 weeks later, the coroner concluded that the two boys had died accidentally. He suggested that the boys were probably playing with matches and gasoline when the shed caught fire.
I was shocked. I was very shocked. My child was certainly smarter than to just lay in the back of a building and wait to be asphyxiated by smoke or burned by fire. It's kind of an obvious thing. I always knew it was a murder, always.
Sue Johnson was not alone in her opinion. From the beginning, Larry Adams also believed that Scott and his friend were the victims of foul play. He had noticed that the door of the shack had not been locked or obstructed in any way.
All anybody had to do to escape that building was push on the door. In this case, in building 6x6, in that panic situation, they would hit that door and escape the building, had they been able to.
A few feet from the door, Adams found a 2x12-inch wooden plank. He thought that it was odd that the board had a small charred circle on one side.
It indicated to me that somebody had prevented their escape through that door. They may have initially tried to hold the door, but it's metal, it got hot, they can't hold the door any longer. They need something to insulate them from the heat. He picked up the 2x12, one on each end or more, and held the 2x12 against the door with one person on each end of it.
Despite this evidence, police closed the case. As the months went by, Sue Johnson was haunted by the burnt-out shed where she believed that her son had been murdered. She continued her efforts to have the case reopened. 4 years after the fire, a convicted felon came forward with a shocking story. Dale Gordon Meter was serving time at a county jail in New Mexico. At the time of the fire, he was living in Bullhead City.
Dale, why don't you tell us in your own words what you saw on the 3rd of April, 1974 at the Powder Magazine?
Anytime you talk to a prisoner that wants to give you information, you know he's trying to cut himself a deal. The man just did not seem like he was, really telling us all the truth. There was, there's knowledge there.
I was parked about, say, 50, 75 yards away from the Powder Magazine, and seeing these two guys.
Meter advised us that he saw two men holding these two young kids and pushing them in the Powder Magazine. One of the kids looked like he was heavily drugged, and the other one was fighting. And then he saw one of the men with a gas can. One of them told him in street terms to get lost, and we just burned up two kids.
10 minutes, I noticed both of them.
Dale Meter told police that he came to know one of the men while serving time at a prison in Nevada. Authorities questioned the man that Meter accused of setting the fire, but were unable to make a case. However, other witnesses backed up Dale Meter's account.
Some kind of narcotic or something.
It was Tina Moe and John Kalu who reported the fire on the day that Scott Johnson and his friend died. They are also convinced that the boys were murdered. At the time, Tina and John were teenagers.
There was two men. One was standing on the side of the hill facing the door of the shack, and the other one, well, he didn't like the idea that we were there, and he took off and went running.
And that's when I said, to Tina, I said, I think we should go call the fire department on this, because I think them guys set this place on fire. And that's when we left.
John and Tina told the police about the two men that they had seen. However, they believed that their statements were ignored because of their own previous scrapes with the law.
It didn't seem like they took it seriously at all. It seemed like they didn't believe my story, and, from my past reputation, it seemed to me like they just disregarded it, and I never heard nothing no more about it.
As time passed, the tragedy faded from public memory, but Sue Johnson continued her quest for the truth.
You wonder, was there someone who wanted this just tucked away quickly and for good? Or was it just sloppy investigation? Or just circumstances. I honestly feel that it was a combination of a lot of things.
I've talked with Sue on the phone and in person many times.
When Dale Lint became the new chief of detectives, he reopened the case as a murder investigation.
I told her in the beginning when I started out that there may not be an answer to this, but we're going to keep looking.
Were Scott Johnson and his friend deliberately burned to death? And if so, why would anyone kill two 10-year-old boys? One clue may be the unusual discovery that Scott made 3 weeks before his death.
Look at what I found!
I think that it's possible that there could have been someone that used that area possibly for a drug transaction or something. And maybe the people that they saw doing this thought that the kids would run a block away to the sheriff's substation and report them. And therefore they felt like they had to do something to stop it.
If we could establish a motive, a reason that these boys were killed, certainly would help the case. But the motive is strictly a matter of speculation on anybody's part as far as I know.
It's very hard to live every day of your life and wonder why your son was murdered and why no one's ever done anything about it in all these many years. I hope that whoever did it gets to pay for what they did someday. I don't care how long it takes. I've been patient this long. I can wait longer if that's what it takes.
The investigation into Scott Johnson's death is still open and active. Detectives hope that a new witness will come forward with information that will point them to the killer.